Back in the 18th century, a portrait was usually just a picture, something to hang on the wall. But one artist looked at that and thought, no, it can be more. It can be heroic. Today, we're diving into the incredible, grand art of Joshua Reynolds.
So let's start with the question that really powered his entire career. Is it possible for a portrait, just a painting of one person, to tell a story that's as big and timeless as a Greek myth or a heroic epic?
Well, in the very proper, very traditional world of 18th century England, one guy dared to say absolutely yes, and his name was Joshua Reynolds. He was about to completely shake up the art world.
Okay, so why was this such a big deal? You have to understand, back then, portrait painting wasn't really seen as high art. It was more like a craft. A service for rich people who wanted a nice likeness of themselves. Reynolds thought it deserved to be so much more.
See, Reynolds looked at a portrait and believed it could have the same kind of emotional punch, the same depth as the great classical masterpieces. And this belief, this conviction, led him to invent a whole new way of painting.
He called it the grand manner. And look, this wasn't just about making people look prettier than they were. It was about idealization. His whole goal was to capture the absolute best version of a person by mixing their real features with the noble, heroic vibes of ancient gods and heroes.
And the difference was just night and day. Before Reynolds, portraits were often kind of stiff, very literal. They felt stuck in someone's living room. But a grand manner portrait, it felt noble, timeless, heroic. He wasn't just painting people anymore. He was basically turning them into legends. So, what was his secret? Well, a huge part of his philosophy was this idea of borrowing from the best to create something totally new. He spent ages studying the Renaissance masters. We're talking Michelangelo, Raphael, and he'd adapt their powerful poses and dramatic scenes to make his modern-day subjects look just as important. And this whole idea translated right into his painting technique. You could say the art of idealism is a really delicate balancing act, right? You've got to capture what someone actually looks like, but at the same time, give them this sort of universal, timeless beauty. And you can spot a Reynolds painting from a mile away. He used this soft, almost hazy light that gives his subjects this dreamy, ethereal feeling. Think of his famous painting, The Age of Innocence. Then he'd mix that with these super rich, deep colors and pose his subjects in these elegant, classical ways, like the incredible Sarah Siddons as the tragic muse. It all comes together in these huge, grand, but perfectly balanced scenes. His process was basically a recipe for creating heroes. Step one, you get a good likeness. But that's just the start. Then you infuse it with that ideal beauty, compose the whole thing like a Renaissance master would, and finally, you hit it with that signature dramatic light and color. And boom, you have a heroic transformation. But Reynolds was thinking bigger than just his own studio. His ambition went way beyond his own paintings. He had this massive vision to lift up all of British art and lock in his grand style as the gold standard for the entire nation. And you know what? He actually did it. In 1768, he became the very first president of the Royal Academy of Arts. This gave him a massive platform to totally reshape the future of art in Britain.
From there, his influence just exploded. Founding the Academy in '68 gave artists a place to train. A year later, he starts giving his famous discourses on art, which pretty much became the official playbook for this new British style. And by 1784, he's the king's personal painter. See, he wasn't just a popular artist. He was building the whole system, turning his personal style into a national one.
So all of this brings us to the really big question. Why do we still care? Why do these paintings of aristocrats from centuries ago still feel so powerful, so alive to us today? Seriously, when you stand in front of one of his portraits, you feel something, right? There's a real presence there that just seems to cut through time. So what's his secret? What's the source of that incredible, lasting power? Well, I think the answer is in what he was actually painting. Reynolds didn't just capture how someone looked in a particular moment. He painted their character, their dreams, their ambition. He painted the person they wanted to be, and in that aspiration, he found something truly timeless.
And maybe that's the final takeaway. What Reynolds ultimately showed us is that a truly great portrait is never, ever just a face. It's a story. And by telling those stories with so much drama and humanity, he made sure that his work and the people in it would basically live forever.